This segment has been sponsored by Pro Bikes Caribe. Pro Bikes Caribe, get yours today. Before we get into today's interview, hear a little bit about the book from the author themselves.
Ephemeral Euphoria, and I am the author, Justyn Pierre. Ephemeral Euphoria is a poetry book that allows you to join a young man's journey as he embarks upon a quest of love, facing his challenges and embracing the path to self-discovery. The poetic stories of his journey are open to young adults and adults alike. You can get the book on Amazon and in the Trinidadian bookstores, paper-based and scribbles and quills.
Greetings, listenership. Welcome to TLC, Tropical Literature Creatives, the podcast where we interview authors of Caribbean heritage about themselves and about their literary works. Some of the authors you've heard of, and the others you'll be hearing about soon enough. Today we have with us Justyn Pierre, author of the book of poetry, Ephemeral Euphoria. Did I get it correct, Justyn?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, great. Justyn, welcome to TLC, Tropical Literature Creatives.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. For those who are listening who are not acquainted with you, can you tell us which Caribbean island you are affiliated with?
I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I am a very proud Trinbagonian.
Okay, great to hear that, Justin. There's usually a scenario that I pose to persons. Now, imagine we encounter each other in the airport. I'm coming to Trinidad and Tobago for the first time. What would you recommend that I try? What food would you recommend that I eat? Which place would you recommend that I go to? Or anything at all?
Well, as a Trinidadian, it would only be right for me to recommend that you have some doubles. In terms of where to go, the few places that come to mind are Maracas Beach. They could also get some bacon shark, which is world renowned as far as I know.
Ah,
And you could also go to the Bamboo Cathedral if you want to hike or be a little more active,
okay. I mean, that sounds like you get the balance there. You have
Yeah.
food, you have the active lifestyle, and you have something for relaxation in the form of the beach. Personally, which one are you more inclined towards?
Well, I'm a good bit more inclined towards going to the beach because I have a lot of history at Maracas Beach. My family has always been there since as far as I can remember. Every vacation, July, August, we'd always go to the beach and spend some time there. So I have fond memories there.
I mean, that sounds really intimate. I mean, with your family and everything, it sounds like it's a memory that you hold very close to you, and it sounds
Yeah,
like a place that you hold very close to you as well.
it is. It is.
Are you a full-time writer or author, or are there other things that you do to bring in an income?
Well, right now I am leaning more towards being a full-time author. Um, it life hasn't been too kind to me in terms of I was working with my sister with her baking company, but unfortunately she passed away recently.
Oh,
So
I my
it's
condolences, man.
thank you. And so it's been a pretty difficult period adjusting and figuring out where to go from here and trying to make writing my full-time job in at least while I try to figure things out. So right now I'm putting a good bit of effort into my writing.
Okay. Well, I mean, being a writer, tell us a bit more about your book. Like, for example, how you put together the title for that? It sounds like ephemeral euphoria. Sounds like, uh, it's a fleeting sensation, something that is both
Yeah.
joyful and very short-lived.
Yeah, because I really liked the way that it contrasted the oxymoron of it because the book encapsulates the coming together and departing of a relationship. It follows the male perspective of love and loss. And so the idea is that there are some relationships in life that you go through where as great as it is, as much as the love is intense, as much as you have the happiness and all the joy, it can end just as abruptly. And it's how, from the male perspective, how the male protagonist, he goes through the motions of being in love and then figuring out how to move on from losing that love and that experience and finding himself through that journey.
I mean, you mentioned male perspective, male protagonist. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about the origins of it coming together? Because I feel like there's a story in there somewhere.
Well, there is a story. When I was in school, we did we had to study Thomas Hardy as a poetry book.
Hmm.
And I just remember how somber and how dreary his poems were and how intense they were in terms of his relationship. And it was very eye-opening because at that point in time, I hadn't really experienced much of the emotional side of relationships from men. I hadn't heard much account of men being as
Vocal?
like as very as vocal as they are about their suffering or their trials in relationships. And it opened my eyes to that side of it. And I was very interested to see how I could explore it and kind of follow in his footsteps in creating a book similar to that.
I mean, those are, I mean, it sounds like a grand aspiration. I mean, it,
Yeah.
it sounds like, well, I'm not too acquainted with Thomas Hardy or his writings, but the
Yeah.
fact that it's a staple in schools, it leads me to believe that he is someone who, persons find acceptable and at the same time who is popular enough so that persons would make note or mention of.
Yeah.
So, and it seems that, those are the heights that you're aspiring towards. So, I mean, very ambitious, very
Mhm.
ambitious.
Very ambitious is correct.
And I like,
And even
continue.
sorry, even in the way that I put together the poetry book, it from what I've seen so far, it's it flows more like a story, like rather than a collection of poems. Each poem flows into the next one, telling a story of poems, which was something that I was very interested in doing, as it was something I hadn't really seen done before, and it was difficult to manage to get it to fit the way that I wanted it to fit, but I was very happy with the way that it came out in the end.
All right. I mean, I'm really glad about your writings because as uh, in social media today, a lot of persons, yeah, there's a lot of posts and stuff about relationships and persons and their side and their perspective of it. And you don't really hear much about, stuff from the male side, because traditionally, men aren't very vocal about, things of this nature. And I
Yeah.
think it's an interesting perspective that you're coming from, an interesting offering that you have with your writings. In putting your book together, is it something that you did yourself, or is it that you had like assistance with from maybe other authors, other persons who contributed, other persons who shared their thoughts and their ideas that influenced, your writings?
In terms of the writing itself, the main influence would be stories that I've heard from some friends and from online and Reddit threads, just gaining more insight from more people who were vocal, more men who were vocal about their struggles. And I wanted to really highlight that side. So that's where the main inspiration came from. In terms of creating the book and putting it all together, I I was responsible for everything from making the cover to writing everything to putting it all together. And so it's a self-published book through and through.
Interesting, interesting. But I mean, you got my interest with the self-publishing part because I always like to hear about the person's self-publishing journey because from what I've learned is that there isn't like a textbook or a manual that I've come across so far that gives you step-by-step instructions
Yeah.
to the self-publishing process. Can you share a little bit about one, your experience in the process, and two, a little bit about the process itself?
Okay. Yeah. About the process, it was very difficult because there are a lot of aspects to creating the book that vary so differently from writing it. In terms of putting it together, I chose to go through the route of Amazon for self-publishing. So there were many YouTube videos, many hours spent Googling trying to figure out exactly how to get the right measurements and align everything perfectly. And even to figure out all the different rules and regulations that I would have to conform to in terms of Amazon in particular. In terms of the journey itself of self-publishing, I have to, because I know I said there's a lot of it that I did by myself, but the people, my friends and my family, they supported me throughout the whole journey, and even in little things from going to my friend who was an artist to help me figure out certain things about the cover and getting that motivation from my father and my sisters to say, yes, you're going on the right track, you're doing the right thing. So as tough as it got, figuring out everything and staying on track, I had a lot of support from my family and friends to help me push through and reach the goal.
It's really good that you had that kind of support because uh, when I interact with persons, a lot of persons indicate, it's usually them, they're learning, they're doing this stuff, they have to be motivated by themselves, etc. But the fact that your family was involved in this venture is a very interesting and encouraging element to your story that you're sharing with us.
Yeah.
How come you chose the route of self-publishing as opposed to the traditional route, though?
Firstly, it was the freedom that I believed that I would get from self-publishing. I wanted to test myself as well to see if I would be able to bring forth my ideas the way that I wanted to bring it out. And also, it seemed easier to get it published, get it online on Amazon. And to be honest, it really was a test. I really wanted to see how much I would be able to go, how far on this journey I'll be able to make it on my own. Because I did management in UV management studies, and I
Ah,
was very fascinated with the whole marketing side of creating the books. And I've read so many stories before I decided to go through with making the book about people publishing books and falling short here and not really understanding exactly what it took. And it it was I believe it was a necessary step for me to really appreciate the career of being a writer. So that's why I decided to choose the self-publishing path.
yeah. I mean, everybody has their story, and yours is no less interesting.
Thank you.
In coming from Trinidad and Tobago, would you say that affected it? I mean, your writings or your offerings in any way? The culture of the Caribbean, the culture of that country, in fact.
Culture. Yes, I would say so. In in many ways, the culture impacted me. I would prefer to lean more towards the culture of literature that
Hmm.
really pushed me towards writing the way that I do and understanding the world of literature and poetry and prose the way that I do, because from primary school all the way to when I decided to do literature in Form 6, they always offered these local books from Boyo and Carlo to to Thomas Hardy eventually. We've always been given the opportunity to read local authors, even regional authors. And I would say that there are a lot of elements from Trinidadian literary history that really shine through in the way that I put the work forward.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of heritage in my writing, I would say.
I mean, that's encouraging to look towards.
Yeah. Of course, there are still elements that shy away from the Caribbean aspect in and of itself, because the theme is more general than just a Caribbean based theme of love and relationships and loss. I really hoped that it would push past a boundary, a territorial boundary, and it would be able to be understood and encapsulate the idea for as many people as possible. But I definitely would like to settle back into my roots a little bit for a few books in the future.
I mean, you said something there. You have intentions of writing more books in the future, which, I mean, this is your first book, or is this the first of several books that you will be writing?
This is the first of several books. I wish my goal is to separate from poetry, because I
Mm-hmm.
would also like to venture into prose to create some novels.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just the first step. And I hope that the novels can really build up upon the experience I've gained with creating this poetry book. And I could really express myself and explore different aspects of not only the Caribbean region, but also certain geographical locations from all around the world in my upcoming books.
Okay. I mean, one of the let me stop saying I mean. One of Yeah. Um, your book, it wasn't originally intended for persons like teens, young adults, etc. What do you want them to take away from your book when it is that these persons readers, or maybe not just this age group, but just readers on the whole? What would you like them to take away from this book?
That it is okay to suffer. It is natural. It is okay to go through pain. It is a process. And as terrible as it feels, especially as young adults, emotions really hit you a lot harder in your late teens and your early 20s. As terrible as it feels and it seems, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And as hard as it may feel to carry on, there is so much more that is waiting for you when you do decide to carry on. And these hurdles, these obstacles that you face in life, they make you stronger, and you do get a lot better for sticking it out and pushing through and overcoming it.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like you're giving young persons advice on, in relationships,
Yeah.
in encountering a person for the first time, their interaction, and maybe the first person who they meet isn't the person who they would ultimately find themselves with, and it's okay to be disappointed, go through the emotions, feel your feelings, and but there is opportunity to try again. Uh, I I mean, it's kind of difficult for me to articulate this. Not so much because it's difficult, but personally, I'm not a person who's entirely in touch with my emotions. And
Okay.
honestly, I don't like to talk about relationships and stuff as much. It's not a strong suit that I have. But I just get the impression that the writings that you have is something along those lines, and it would help persons develop, a healthy relationship with themselves and also in relationships that they find themselves in.
Yes, that is the aim. We talk. You mentioned about the culture here,
Yeah.
because just briefly, in UE, when I studied in UE, my degrees are in management studies and in psychology, which is why when they come together in this way, I see the potential to push forth and market the aspects of struggles that are left unspoken, to let people know that it is okay. And whether it is that you deal with your struggles internally and you find a way to express it through work, through a hobby, or however, whichever constructive manner you choose, you also have the option to not feel alone. Because I know a lot of times in my own life, that has been something that has helped me a lot. For instance, with my sister, knowing that my family was there and recognizing that we were all going through this struggle together and we could all lean on each other, that helped me so much to overcome the grief. That even though I'm still dealing with it, it helps me to this day to really push through and gain a better perspective of how to handle everything. So the emotional aspect of things is something that I'm very much open to shed some light and open up some minds to.
Mm. You had mentioned that you had studied that you were studying in UE? What field of study were you pursuing?
I studied management studies and psychology, a double major.
Right. In terms of those topics, would those have assisted you in helping promote and market your book?
Greatly.
Yeah. And,
Psychology in particular greatly
and
helped me.
tell me a little bit about that, because from the persons who I usually interview, the misconception is that you write the book and that is it, that is the end of the story. But persons usually learn over time that after they write the book, they must become, the promoter of the book, the person who finds ways, creative ways of pushing the book out there. There's a term that one of the authors who I interviewed uses. What is it, man? Authorpreneurship, I think, is the term that persons use.
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me a bit about your authorpreneurship process.
Well, the process involved a lot of research firstly. Before I even started writing the book,
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time reading and researching what process other authors went through, especially in self-publishing. And I read all the horror stories to all the success stories. I read as much as I could to gain as much information as possible. And moving from that, that's where I really understood how much more work this career path and this journey would involve.
Mm-hmm.
So social media was something that was always touted as being a great place to market your book and to gain a lot of traction. They mentioned a few sites. Reddit is always one that's open to most career fields, honestly, from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the basis of it. The fundamentals of my marketing comes from my experiences creating fictional stories, fan fiction,
Mm-hmm.
on a website called fanfiction.net.
Ah.
And I would say that's where I got my confidence to write, because my sister, who recently passed, she introduced me to the site when I was about 14. And at that time, I was so interested in this place where so many different people were writing their versions of famous stories like Percy Jackson. And I didn't know what else to do but try to express my own ideas of the books. And since then, I've learned how to interact with people based off of my writing. I've learned how to handle a lot of criticism based off my writing. And I've got the opportunity to let my writing evolve through that means. And I hope that in the future, I could go beyond just that audience that I have from fanfiction.net and expand as much as possible on this journey of how you say the word again?
Authorpreneurship.
Authorpreneurship.
Yes. I mean, it looks like it's a learning process for you as well as myself, because when I came across that term, I thought it was, this is pretty apt. So
Yeah.
authorpreneurship is the compo is the word. It's the word.
Okay.
Uh, in terms of your writing process, do you follow any kind of like rituals or process? Like for some persons, they write like a paragraph every morning, or they journal when they get home. You had mentioned the site that you go to, fanfiction.net. Is it something that you go and you do writing on a regular basis? Tell me a little bit about that, if you have
Well,
one, that is.
yeah, I used to go there a lot more often, and it was recently. How long ago would it be now? I believe it would have been a year, maybe 2 years now,
Mm-hmm.
before I published this book. I I said to myself, I haven't I hadn't written a story there for a long time. And I said to myself, if I'm going to be an author, if I'm going to try this, I have a site here where I can put out my work and gauge how much I've grown from the last time I put out any work. And so I created my own story, well, my own fan fiction, as I would say,
Mm-hmm.
and the reception was overwhelmingly positive. And based off of that reception, I said, okay, I have something. I know what to do in a little bit. And that's why I decided to pursue writing full time. Well, given the circumstances, writing full time. But
Mm-hmm.
it is something that I still enjoy doing. and I'm looking to get back into, because it would have the story that I'm mentioning from fan fiction, I intended it to be a one part of three. So we'll see where the next part goes from the new year.
All right. All right. Uh, in terms of the book itself, how has the reception been? I mean, I know that you said that you would have attempted to write stories on the side and the response was positive. The book that you'd have written, has the response been similar? And if it has been similar, has it been similar both locally and outside of Trinidad?
I wouldn't say similar as yet. The book, it's it is a particularly niche category, poetry. It
Mm-hmm.
it is not a category that tends to do well in the literary world, but from what I understand, it has done particularly well initially. It's had a much better first few months than is typically other poetry books I've had. So I'm hoping to compound that. In terms of locally, I've had scribbles and quills,
You might just hear,
paper based.
in terms of your book, what has the response been like, Justyn?
For a poetry book, the response has been really well, especially in the initial response, because poetry is a very niche and very niche in the literary world, and it doesn't tend to do well in terms of sales, especially from first time poets and authors. It's something that tends to take a few books to build up traction, but the initial response has been very well. Locally, I've had the help of Scribbles and Quills and Paper Based, where they sell my books, and it's been an honor, honestly, to be able to see my books in a bookstore,
Mm-hmm.
and it really validates me as an author. So I'm very grateful for them to give me the opportunity. But yeah, that's how the response has been.
Okay, I mean, that is encouraging to know. Uh, but in terms of marketing, I mean, how is that going? Is it that you find, is it aside from the bookstores that you mentioned, has it been difficult for you to get your books into other establishments, other bookstores, maybe even the library?
It has not actually. In Trinidad we have Heritage, and there's a first time authors program which I managed to get through in terms
Hmm.
of being accepted as part of the first time authors of Trinidad and Tobago. So it would have been earlier this year in around May, June, I would have been accepted then. Unfortunately, I was out of the country at that point in time, so I couldn't be there in person. But
Yeah.
it it really is it really has been shocking to be so well received as an author in the country, which I'm very grateful for.
Okay. I mean, and I can understand where you're coming from. First time author, a genre that is what it is. And here it is,
Yeah.
your writing is being well received. So by all means, man, just yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. Aside from paper-based and scribbles and quills, if persons wanted to get copies of your books, where can we get copies?
Well, you can get copies on Amazon, amazon.com.
Hmm.
Right now it's the primary source of the book. It will have the most copies available right now, and hopefully in the future, I would like to expand into more local stores, but that'll be a goal for next year.
Okay. No, well, and that is a very ambitious and not just ambitious, but I can understand why it is that you want to pursue that, but why it is that why does you want to undertake that goal?
Yeah.
All right, but I mean, the interview's wrapping up in a few moments' time. Uh, what advice do you have to give for other authors who want to do something similar to like what you have been doing, who want to perhaps maybe self-publish a book and who want to go ahead and promote it, but it's something that they're not too sure that they want to do.
Take the risk. Take the risk is what I would say. It's all worth it to follow your dreams. There's always a right way to do it, and you have to be careful and ensure that you're in the right position to do it. But once you have a dream and a goal, take the risk. Just take the chance to become who you want to be and do the things that you want to be. And at the very least, in your heart and soul, you'll feel so accomplished and you will feel rewarded there. I saw in a recent interview that one of the previous authors from Loving the Author,
Mm-hmm.
she said, do it afraid. I
Ah,
believe she said.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I would emulate the same words that she said, do it afraid.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Pamela Hayes. Yeah.
Pamela, right,
I
yes.
remember that interview. I remember that interview. All right. Well, Justyn, it has been a pleasure talking to you. I wouldn't lie, this interview was personal because I had to dig deep, talk a little bit, and have this conversation. But I hope that, I'm able to have conversations like this with yourself in future, the other book,
Yes, for sure.
and even with other authors who promote books that are similar to yours. But having said that, it was a pleasure, and I look forward to hearing about good things and the successes that you would be experiencing in the future, Justyn.
Thank you very much. I also very much appreciate this opportunity and this interview. It really means a lot to me. And we'll definitely talk again for the next book.
Okay, man, Justyn. Again,
All
thank you
right.
very much for agreeing to be interviewed and have a good evening.
All right. You too, man.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
You've been listening to TLC, Tropical Literature Creators. If you've heard something of interest or something you like, reach out to us. Reach out to our authors. Follow us on social media. We look forward to hearing from you.